A Marine is characterized as one who possesses the highest of military virtues. He obeys all orders, respects his seniors, and strives constantly to be the very best at everything he does. Discipline and spirit are the hallmarks of a Marine. You too can become a Marine if you develop discipline and spirit. We will give every effort to train you, even after some of you have given up on yourself. You're listening to Two Marines, One Mic.
What's up, everyone? You're listening to Two Marines, One Mic. As always, I'm Phil.
And this is Wade.
And we're your hosts. What? Dude, this is cool. We got a camera there. We got Anthony Trucks over there. We got a GoPro over there. In the new Two Marines, One Mic podcast studio, also known as where I sleep at night. We're having fun, man. Episode 41, and we have Anthony Trucks. Anthony, welcome, man. Thanks so much.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Dude, I'm super excited. So we were introduced to you by
Kevin and Alan.
Yeah. We did a podcast with them, and we had a blast, man. Those are some good dudes.
They are real good dudes, man. It's rare that you find people that at first you're like, they can't be this happy, and they're genuinely good, happy dudes, like consistently.
Until we made him push the sled 400 meters.
Oh, Kevin almost died, like literally.
Yeah,
it was pretty entertaining. We actually kind of like exchanged some people we thought were good fits for one another's podcast, and we mentioned to them Chris Rudin, who's on the Titan Challenge right now with The Rock.
Oh, really?
Have you watched that at all?
I watched the first 2 episodes. I applied for the show. I got an email callback, but I think that you got to be an average Joe, so the NFL background doesn't help me.
Yeah, probably not. That's not an average show.
Yeah, well, wasn't there that guy? His name was Average Joe that played in the NFL.
That's possible, yeah. Yeah,
it's a good thing.
So typically our podcast, we don't always have guests, but when we do, oftentimes they are veterans. In your case, you're not a veteran. However, you did tell me like a lot of your siblings and relatives are veterans, which is really cool. Yeah. But we do bring people on that just have extraordinary stories, and yours is one of those. And that starts at a very early childhood, traumatic childhood. So if you want to share with our listeners like a little bit of your backstory, and then we'll bring it to full circle to like the amount of adversity that you've overcome and just the amazing positive mindset you have and some of the things that you speak about now, which we'll dive into about Own Your Shift and Modified Identity.
Modified Identity. That's it. That's the company name. Yeah. You know what? I've actually been thinking about changing it. That's a different conversation for a different time. Okay. It's just too hard for people to say. So
I paused for a second, but I nailed it.
You did. You got it. Honestly, you got it perfect. You're the first person.
I could cut the pause out too.
Perfect. Love that.
Boom. Chop it. Yeah, man. So my background, it's long. So like you said, I have a lot of family that are military. My brother now, he currently serves, he'll retire. To my best friends, family members, so I've kind of been around the service for years. I just went the route of an athlete. I got a college scholarship, and that was my role. It's funny, my grandpa's a Marine, and he's the one that really, I think, like shaped me up prior to going off to college, because he was just hardcore. And one of those moments you're like, why is he so tough? And then in hindsight, as a man, I'm glad he was. So a great deal of respect for those who serve. But yeah, my story, man, I grew up in foster care. I was given away at 3 years old into the foster care system in Antioch, actually in California. I ended up in Antioch at 6 years old after 3 years of bouncing around between, I think, 5 different homes. And it gets tough because in that system, you're pretty much what's called a paycheck, which means if you don't die, everything's right in the world. So people wouldn't feed me. I'd be beaten. A lot of craziness would take place. And back then, there's no cameras. There's no internet. There's nobody. There's no phones except for a house phone. So I can't really report anything. And when you're a kid in the system, all they know is you want to go back to mom. So when you do say something, they think you're crazy. This 3-4-year-old kid, he's just lying. So a lot of my years were just crazy going through that. Then at 6 years old, I got put into a family which is, they look a little different than me. I'm the only black person in my family. So I have that weird dynamic to kind of navigate as a young kid of being called an Oreo and just being, the standing out kind of kid. And it was real bad. In school, I was that bad. Like, I was actually a stinky kid in class. I didn't take showers. Like, I was just such a bad, stinky little kid, man. I used to piss my teachers off. And for a lot of years, it was because I was really angry inside. I had no idea where I fit. And I think a lot of us throughout life, we have these moments that take place when we're young or when we're old, or our entire life of like, I don't know really where I fit. And so that kind of anguish inside it got put onto other teachers, other classmates, my parents. It was really tough. And then I eventually got adopted at 14 years old after 8 years in the system, going through a lot of craziness with my real mom and all this nutso stuff. And then I got to do something which for me was a humongous blessing. But it's for most people, they take it for granted. But I got to hit people as hard as I could and not get in trouble. And it was football. I got to go out and unleash like all this pent up anger and energy. And it gave me a great sense of, for the first time in my life, self-worth. And that's kind of my childhood years. There's times where, it gets tough. Like when I first played, I sucked. I was really, really bad. Like I couldn't catch a cold, I'll tell you. I could tackle people. I was like the water boy, Bobby Boucher. I could just run around and tackle people.
Oh,
yeah, man, that was my world. So
story, dude.
That was it. That's the beginning of my life. Was just me kind of, traversing the crazy terrain of just life and not really feel like I had a home or feel like I was solid anywhere, and then getting to a point where I played sports and it gave me that sense of self-worth, and that was kind of the catalyst of the rest of my life.
Absolutely, man. Now let's start there, where your childhood, man, and I was adopted as well. Very different type of situation, but all in all, like I understand those feelings, and maybe not as intense as you, but who knows? We all are on our own scale, right?
Yeah.
Of abandonment, like nobody wants me kind of feeling, like the feeling that I'm not good enough, right? I was adopted when I was 6 days old.
Yeah.
I wasn't even like a thing yet. Yeah. And thank God, like I did not go into the foster care system. I was adopted to a fantastic family, man, and my parents were amazing. They're all that I know, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know anything of my birth parents. I think we tried to reach out to my biological mom once, and she kind of was like, not having it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that hurt, dude. I was 18 then, and that was a feeling of oh, still? It's been a long time, and you still don't want to, know who I am? Mm-hmm. Cool. Anyway, totally, okay with that now. I've jumped over those borders, but that feeling of, not belonging anywhere, I understand it. And then in your story, it's worse because not only were you put into the foster care system at an age where you can remember, mm-hmm. but you weren't allowed to do the things that you wanted because if I remember listening to the story correctly, and please correct me if I'm not accurate, that your mom still had some sort of, your biological mother still had some sort of rights and used them really to kind of spite you. No, I don't want you playing sports. I don't want you doing these things. Mm-hmm. But by the way, I don't want you living with me either.
Yeah. It's a weird balance because when you're a kid, all you know is I want mom or I want dad. And you don't know who they are as people, right? It took me 14 years to realize this woman was not a good mom. And so all I want to do is go back there. So literally you fight for love. So we would have visitations. I'd want to clean the house, or I want to do things can I stay? Can you please keep me? And just you have that weird battle, and you feel the whole time like you're not good enough. And what's tough is I lived in a different home, and what's called parental rights is what you're talking about, where she has control, final say, even though she doesn't live in the home. And so if I wanted to go the family wanted to go to Disneyland, I wouldn't be allowed to go to Disneyland. If I wanted to play sports, couldn't play sports. I couldn't do stuff. And she's what's called a pathological liar, so she'll make these lies up and believe them. So she actually blamed the foster care system and my foster parents for why I was in foster care. It was a really weird dynamic. Just think of that's what's going on in her head. And so for me, it was always no. And so I had no outlets. I had nothing that I could do to make me feel better about myself. I felt like, I wasn't good enough to begin with, and now I couldn't go and express myself in any way to gain confidence by doing a sport or just going and playing with friends. I wasn't allowed to even take trips. So that was kind of the beginning of life for me for 14 years, was really feeling like I was in a weird kind of prison, to be honest.
So that's actually a very pivotal age for a youth male. And do you feel because I was listening to Ray Lewis the other day, and it's on the same montage as Inky Wright, I think his last name is?
Inky Johnson.
Inky Johnson, okay. Yeah. And they shared, their stories were almost parallel. They still have their mom in their household, but the mom just went from one bad relationship to the next, constantly being beaten by men, and they both grew up wanting to get stronger to be able to defend their mother. Mm-hmm. And so football was that outlet, like you're saying, finally I could hit something and not get in trouble for it. Do you feel had you not found an outlet, you would have went down a different path, or there could have been that potential?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if you look at statistics for foster kids, like me, any prison in America, 75% of the population in the prison are former foster kids, to this day. If you look at any homeless population, 51% of the homeless population are former foster kids. So statistically, yes, that's where I would end up. And to be honest, I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm perfect. When I was 17, I got in trouble for breaking into cars with my buddies. Like, I was still doing dumb stuff. It's hard, and it depends on where you grow up. And most of the time, when you're in foster care, you're not coming from the perfect suburbs. It's usually like downtrodden ghetto type areas. So most of the kids were exposed to not very great situations to begin with. Like, I grew up in an all white family, but we were like poor. Like, I tell a dumb joke if I grew up poor white trash. Like, it's a stupid joke, but like, we didn't have money, and I grew up down the street from like a bad place. Had a bunch of transients walking around. So yeah, man, my parents, I'm the only kid in my family to graduate from the high school without a GED. I'm the only person in my family to graduate from college, and I'm the foster kid, right? So if I go down statistically, I'm not set up to do very well.
Right. So then you go to the University of Oregon. Obviously, I'm assuming on a scholarship.
Yeah, we couldn't pay for it.
Yeah,
I wasn't going because I could pay for it.
and then from that point, you go into the NFL. Were you drafted, or did you go on as a free agent?
I went as a free agent. So I went out to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it's a situation where like it sucked because if you sit on draft day, I remember draft day, I'm sitting there like the 5th round, I get a call from the Buccaneers like, hey, we're gonna go and we're gonna draft you. I'm like, oh, nice, right? I'm gonna get a call, no pickup. Then like 6th round comes, hey, we're gonna pick you. I'm like, all right, cool, 6th round works. 7th round they had 2 picks. They're like, hey, we didn't get you in the 5th and the 6th. We're gonna get you with one of these 2 picks in the 7th. I'm like, perfect. The first pick of 7th round goes by. They pick some D linemen. And then the last pick, it's like, hey, we're going to get you with this next pick. They draft my teammate. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Yeah, man. But then as soon as the draft closes, I'm what's called a priority free agent. So I had offers from Buffalo, Arizona, and Tampa right after the draft closed. And I was trying to figure out which one. We went with Tampa Bay because they had already previously showed interest. Hindsight, would have been good to go to Arizona. The Cardinals were a suckier team. When the team's not so good, you get a better chance of playing.
Right. And then I have down here, you also played for the Redskins and the Steelers.
Yeah.
And then you sustained an injury?
Yeah, man. I tore my left shoulder playing against the Philadelphia Eagles in 2008. Yeah, so the NFL stands for not for long. So you get in,
not for
you do
long,
your thing, and you get out. So, I came in, played with the Buccaneers, got cut in the final cuts, got picked up week, I want to say 13 with the Redskins of the 2006 season. And then I was there from 06 into 07, got cut the first game within the season for the Redskins, and then got picked up week 9 with the Steelers. With the Steelers from week 9 through the playoffs into the next year, and then tore my shoulder in the first preseason game of the year, and my career was done. And what's worse, in 2008, the Steelers went on to win a Super Bowl. So had I been around, and it sucks because that was the first time I was finally making headway. Like when you're underdog, you're always fighting for a spot. And I'd finally got to where I was like second string on special teams behind like the starters. Like you typically aren't going to see Troy Polamalu run down on every kickoff, right? So I was like behind Troy. So that pretty much like I was climbing, and then I tear my shoulder, and that was the end of my career.
And then what age are you at that point?
Dude, I think I'm 25, 24. I was 24, was going to be 25 by the end of that year. So this is August. So that year I turned 25.
So that's crazy because like a lot of these guys I hear listen to and certain stuff are like, my dream's over at 23, 24, 25. Dude, so it's like, now what?
So now you're on the hunt for identity, dude. It's the same as dudes getting out of the military, man. Yep. Mm-hmm. You're like, this is all I know, dude. I'm 22 years old, just got back from a combat deployment, and they're like, yo, I mean, I made the decision to get out, but at the same time, I'm like, still a little bit lost here.
Yeah.
And we go through that struggle of, who am I? What am I supposed to do? Mm-hmm. Where am I supposed to be? And that took me, it took me years, dude. And I can't imagine how you went from, okay, cool. Football was the way out, right? You found that.
Yeah.
Now you made it to the most elite level, the most sought after position in professional sports to most people to have an opportunity to play in the NFL. And now your body fails.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
Now where do you go from there, right?
So what did you do?
Man, I got lost. it's good when it happens, right? I mean, the thing is crazy is I think football has a weird dynamic that it ties to it because you spent 12 years of my life playing the sport. So I was invested 12 years deep, and then you get to a level where when you're in the NFL, everybody knows you and they all want a piece of you. And it's Anthony, the guy who plays in the Steelers. You come home and the hometown loves you, and then you get hurt, it's gone, gone. And this skill set that I have, I can't use. I don't know the military. I can't say I've been in the military, but I know my buddy, he came out he's a police officer. There's certain skill sets he can carry over somewhere. My brother was a firefighter. He went that realm, right? So he was in the Navy, did firefighting, came out, did that. He actually went back in the military, but for me, I can't run around and tackle people. I can't use that skill set.
Well, you can, but
you get in trouble, right? The crazy guy. I wouldn't be on the podcast.
Going to have talks with you.
Right. And then on top of that, you have this sense of the identity is tied to also an ego. Because when I'm out there on the practice field and the game field, I got to think I'm the baddest dude out there. So when I come home, that bravado, it's still there. But I'm at this point now, I'm 6, 7, 8 years removed from the workforce. I don't have any skill sets. Everybody that I went to high school with is now levels ahead of me. So how do I figure this out? How do I feel like I matter when I'm not Anthony the football player anymore? And so for me, I dug my heels in because that's what I knew to do. I knew how to work real hard. And so my degree was in kinesiology. I figured, I know the sports world. I'll do this novel thing that every football player does. I started training athletes, right? I opened this gym and just dug in there. And in doing so, it kind of gave me a chance to go back to my roots of what I knew. But the problem was, is I was neglecting my wife. I was married to my high school sweetheart. We had 3 kids, and man, we went crazy. It was this thing where I gave all of myself to the wrong area and didn't realize till too late that it was the bane. What I thought I had to do as a man was the worst direction and decision I could make, because my effort wasn't going to what mattered. It was going to what I thought mattered. In a sense of I thought they needed money and support, and so that's what a man does, right? But my wife needed her husband, my kids needed a dad. But I was just digging my heels into what I knew. I was doing what I did in football, but now I wasn't getting paid the same way. So a little different dynamic.
Yeah, and we had talked last week on the phone, the gym business is a grind. It's some hours.
Yeah. Too many. I was there from there's days I would legitimately get there at 6 a.m. and wouldn't go home till 10. And I would just dig in and I'd be dead. And what was worse in the beginning, I wasn't making money. I didn't pay myself for a year and a half. So not only am I gone, but I'm not having anything financially to show for it. And I think the part of me that was around the background is I still had this identity in my head of I got to be this big successful football player / trainer guy, right? And the way to do it's my name's in the building. But my name in the building meant nothing if I couldn't take care of home. And so it was still me. I was sifting through trying to figure out who I was for a lot of years. And I think I would probably say it took me a good 3 years, to really anchor down to know who I am, why I'm here, and to find a bigger purpose for my life from what I'd experienced. And so what I found was for me in my world, when you're an athlete, you know how to work real hard. But it's physically. You can tell me what to do, and I'll go there, and I'll just dig in. I'll run, I'll sprint, I'll lift, I'll put the time in, I'll work. But when you get into this space, if you want to teach people, coach, run a business, it's mental. And I've never spent that much time mentally pushing. I get to the wall of I don't feel like talking to anybody else. I don't want to make any more calls. I'm going to sit here because it doesn't feel comfortable to do it. And I couldn't push through the mental walls. But once I realized that I had garnered some amazing intangible tools as a human, I just had to figure out how to reapply them somewhere else. That's when everything sparked and took off for me.
It's funny, not that I want to go down this rabbit hole. We just recorded another episode all about balance.
Yeah.
And how it's very difficult to achieve balance in every arena of your life. Normally it's one arena is getting a little more attention than the other, and it could cause problems. And, in your case, the professional life was getting more attention than the personal life, and the personal life suffers a little bit. Was there something that was kind of a tipping point to kind of awaken you to the fact that did your wife smack you in the face, say, hey, some shit's got to change? Or
oh man, you don't know the story? This is a different story.
Oh yeah, let's do it, man.
And believe me, it's wide open. I talk about this all the time. So we were on a vacation to Hawaii, and we've been going through craziness for probably a couple of years now. A lot of this it was really tough. We've been together since high school, had 3 kids now. There's stress at home, there's stress of the business not doing very well. I almost went bankrupt a couple times. I was served with eviction papers. So the stress in the house, it's crazy. The NFL money's gone because I poured into this business, and so we're on a trip in Hawaii, and I'd already kind of had some feelings of she's not connected to me, and come to find out she was having an affair. So I'm in the middle of this vacation, and I find out my wife's sleeping with somebody else. It literally took me, took everything from me, mostly because growing up in foster care, I didn't have a family, right? Like my family. So now that that's gone, like that's a part of me gone. At the same time, the football, that was taken recently, so that's gone. And then at the same time, I have this gym that's not doing very well. So when that little piece kind of came out, like I came home and I was in a fog for like legit like 2 months. I was in a fog, just going through the motions. Like I got to go to the gym and be the happy guy, but I know at home, my home life is a wreck. And so I got to be happy for you, but I got no happy in me. And I just kind of went through the motions. Then we were watching a fight on like a Saturday, and my buddy, best friend, says, "Hey, Ant, man, I noticed you're in a fog." He says, "You need to come to grips and realize this is your reality, dude. Like this is what you're going through. You need to start doing something to figure this out." And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like I was in my car, and I remember like this feeling of like a wave of physical pain from the reality of it all just setting in. Like, this is my world. And it's like, shame, like, how'd you get here? You were the football guy. You had this gym. Like, dude, where's your family? You're not even your dad. You're not even a dad to your kids because you're going to get a divorce and all this stuff hit. And it goes from like the brain actually can't distinguish between physical and emotional pain sometimes. And I remember just like a weight, and I just drove off, and I could not stop crying. Like I was trying to like man it up and just wipe them off, but like I couldn't get the tears to stop coming. It was like 3 months of just impacted, just pain. And I sent a text to my friends and family. I said, "Please tell my kids who their father was." And I just disappeared. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I drove off looking for like rat poison, an hour and a half out. No stores were open that sold it, thankfully. And I parked my car somewhere. Like I was just done. And then GPS, the police found me through GPS in my phone. I was able to play it off like, "Oh no, I'm just, out for a drive." And so I went home. But I remember like that was my bottom. Like that was my real dark moment of like I had to come to grips with like, because he said this is your reality, right? The reality was this is your situation with your wife, but the reality was, Anthony, this is your actual life now. Like that was, I think, the wave of all of this hitting me at the same time of like my identity, like the crisis had hit. I'd finally like realized it. It took me a year to really let it settle in, but like I'm not the football guy anymore. I'm not this great husband that people may think I am. I'm not this great dad. And I really have to do something to shift all of this. And it was like that was a catalyst to me saying it's time. And I started having to do a lot of like self-reflection and a lot of ownership and start doing a lot of work.
So that's where the own your shift comes in.
Yeah. I had to own it, man. You gotta like, it's part of it's like you have to, the own your shift can be said a lot of ways. Like you have to first own your shift, right? The shift is the big word, like it's your crap, right? You gotta own that stuff. Because if you don't own it, you don't give yourself permission to fix it. If you just try to say it's no big deal, you kind of ward it off, like you're never going to focus on it, so you'll never actually work on it, so it'll always be in your life. So first you got to own that's your stuff, right? Then I got to own this shift. Like I got to really take this on and like own the moment where I'm going to actually be the one that does the work for it. Because I may know it's in my life and I may own that it's here, but if I don't take ownership of it, I'm not going to work on it either. Because I'm going to say, well, it's there, but it's somebody else's fault. Like it's not my fault. Like, it happened because, she's a bad wife, or because people don't get the business I'm in, or the coaches don't know how good I am. Like, you blame everybody else. But I had to realize, like, hey, sure, I didn't perform on the football field. I got released. If I was balling, I'm still there, right? As a husband, my wife's not doing that if I'm a great husband. Like, it's not going to happen. If I'm running the business right, it's not an issue. And so for me, it's like, okay, cool. As much as I think that we don't realize this, as much as we hate the situations we're in because we feel helpless, because it wasn't my fault, we feel like we don't want to work on them because, well, no matter what I do, nothing's going to change. I have no control. But when you take ownership, you have to do two things. One, you have to admit that you had a part in it, which really sucks because, like, this crap happened and I had a part in it. And it's not my fault my wife, slept with somebody else, but it's my fault we got to a place where she felt she had to, right? It's a crappy place. But the second part of it is saying, okay, cool, now that I realize I have power, what am I going to do with that power? Like, what am I going to change? What am I going to shift? How do I want my life to look? And a lot of this, for me, started looking at what I want. And I just had this perspective of what I want 5 years from now to look like. And I set a picture of what that is, having no idea what the hell does I have to do to get there. Because really, at the end of the day, if you ask someone, what do you want? They can tell you, but no one's really look at the steps in between. For me, if I tell you, it was like, I wanted to be in my home with my wife and my kids. Now, the journey there is going to be really hard now. I got a lot to navigate, but that's what I wanted. Had no idea how to get there, and that's pretty much been my life. I was trying to figure out how do I get there, and how do I teach other people now to get where I got, because I finally have solved it. Like years later, back with my ex-wife, in an odd turn of events, it all worked out odd. I'm successful in business. Like I have my identity. I now work with other people and talk them through how to kind of own your shift. and make these changes. And a lot of it, to be honest, it comes down to just taking action. It's just a small activities of what we do every day.
We're big on that,
dude. That's like everything you just said comes down to like a sentence that I found on your website and one that I say in a different couple of words all the time, dude. So we always talk about accountability, man, and a level of self-awareness that's like not comprehensible for most people at their current state. And the second you can become like actually aware, when you stop lying to yourself of like what you're doing, what you're missing out on, the things that you're doing wrong, the areas that you're not performing in, you can give yourself permission to make changes, right?
Yeah.
You have to be honest, you have to be willing, and you have to be open-minded and listen to some other people sometimes. But you have to want it, right? You have to put in some action, you have to change, right? And there's this quote on your website, and I don't know if you know Ed Milet at all.
I know of him, don't know him.
Okay, cool. So I got to listen to him speak about a year ago now, and I'm going to go do it again pretty soon, and hopefully we're going to have him on the podcast in the next couple of weeks, which will be great.
Nice.
But he said this one thing that punched me in the face, dude, and this is what made me like a listener of the rest of his talk that he had to say. He said, my biggest fear in life is that I'm going to go through, and I have this belief that when I die, I'm going to be able to meet the best version of myself that I could have ever been.
Mm-hmm.
So I make every decision in my life based off of me being able to meet that best version of myself. He said, my biggest fear is that when I die, I'm going to meet this person and be a complete stranger.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think the quote on your website was very similar to that, right?
Yeah.
Like live your best life so that when you die, like with this idea that you're going to be able to meet that best version of yourself and you're not going to be a stranger.
Yeah. I say the last person you want to meet your deathbed is the person you could have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Whoa.
Yeah.
Love it.
This is a weird
like-
thought I had.
Dude, but it's not a weird thought. If you think about it, it makes so much sense and it's so simple.
No, because when you listen to a lot of personal development stuff they talk about, like that's, you go to an old person's home and talk to all those people, their biggest regrets in life are things they didn't do.
Yeah, all day. And that's kind of the crazy thing is a lot of us, like it's funny, before we got on, I was having the thought in my head, like my brain always spins, my best friend in the world. I love the guy to death. Like I would take a bullet for him. But the conversations we have are different. He's not a very outgoing guy. He will actively choose a life that is simple, that he will know is less than the life that he could have just because of the security piece. So he will forego an opportunity for something amazing at the sheer fact that it might not pan out. And for me, it's like, dude, I can't live in that space. Like and he's okay with it. Now, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with him. It's just his perspective. But for me, it's like, I don't have that bone. I have the thought where like, oh, it's going to be cool. I could have had this, and this, but I'm going to be cool and be safe here. It's like life it's short. Like I realized, like for me, my adoptive mom passed away when she was 47. And it's like weird at this point in my life. I'm like, dude, I could be here less than I've already been here. Like, and that seems like it flew by. And I'm like, we literally have no time to waste. So the whole I'll do it next week or I'll start on Monday, like I do not subscribe to any of that kind of stuff. It doesn't help me. Like if I want to change, I change and I make a move because I realize there's no guarantee at all how long I'll be here. And I want to actively try to find the best version and work towards it while still appreciating what I have. So it's kind of a weird back and forth throughout the day of like, I grind, I work, I develop, I build so I can have a better future, but I'm not waiting to enjoy the present. Like I'm not waiting to get to the future to enjoy it. I'm doing it now. I love my kids. I love my wife. I enjoy our life all the time. But at the same time, when it's time to work, I work knowing that I want to have that great feeling at a higher level later on. So it's a weird kind of ebb and flow of life, but I think that for me is what I try to explain to people. It's like you can't just tuck your head and grind and expect that to be somewhere someday you're going to pop up and it's going to be amazing. It's not. Like you got to make it amazing now.
So you're talking about that, and I'm a big believer of that as well, where you can't wait for a certain calendar date to start. It's either like take action now, and we just launched our transformation program, and we do a whole big thing on mindset and goal setting. And since you do personal development and also public speaking, is goal setting something that you discuss with your personal clients?
Oh yeah, man, it's a humongous piece of it. Goal setting for me is I have a practice of how we do it, but it's got to be in there. And what's okay for me to explain to people is that goals can change as you track them down. Because Like where I'm at now, I'm sure where you guys are at, if you go back 10 years, you had no idea you'd be doing a podcast back then.
Not a chance. Right? You told me I was doing a podcast 10 years ago.
A year ago.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, right.
The thing is, somewhere, but your mentality has been the same. Like you've always been a person that goes after, you chase, you find things. It's like looking at a road. There's one road you can go down. A lot of people sit at that road because, well, I don't know where it leads. I'm going to stay here because I know what happens here and this. I know this evil, right? For me, I've always realized that the things I do now are because I went down a scary road and I was presented with a different fork. I could choose a path, but only because I walked down the road. And so in my life now, I'm like, well, I'm going to walk down as many roads as I can because if what I went through in the past got me to this place and I love it, what other road is waiting for me when I continue down that path? And so it's always looking at like, I want to have these new forks I can pop into, because if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd tell you, I'm going to run a gym. I'm going to be a gym owner, best trainer in the world. I'm going to be on Men's Health Magazine. And now I'm like, I just want to sit in my house with my wife and I want to coach people through how to do identity shift. Like way, way different worlds, right? But only because I kept chasing passions.
Dude, I love the identity deal, man. That's something that hits home for me big time. And I could sit here and talk to you all day about it. But Anthony, what we do on our podcast is we ask people 2 questions.
Yeah.
The first being a billboard question that we borrowed from the great Tim Ferriss. Mm-hmm. And the question is, if you had a blank billboard for the world to see, what would be your message to the world? What would be on the billboard?
I would have there's another quote that I made that I always like because I made it for me. And my college coach made us all come in and give a quote. I don't know why he did it, but we all did make a quote up. And the quote that I came up with is, there are 2 types of people in this world. There are those that work and those that watch them at work. I don't mind the audience.
Dude, that's awesome, man. And then we also do a mission of the day. Wade, you want a mission of the day?
Mission of the day is just something for our listeners that they can institute. Maybe this, because we drop our podcast every Monday.
Yeah.
So they'll be listening to us hopefully Monday.
And watching.
Mm-hmm. And watching.
Yeah.
So just like a little something, maybe off of some of the personal development stuff you've done that they could institute instantaneously that's not going to make them massively uncomfortable, maybe just like a little bit uncomfortable, that could make an impact in a positive capacity in their life.
Yeah. So this is something I do with my clients. They hate doing, but like we talked about before, if I don't like own my stuff, I can't fix it, right? So what I have people do and they hate, I do interviews. You got to do 3 interviews throughout the week, however you do it. The first 2 interviews with people that you know, like you, and love you. You sit down and ask them, hey, what are the good things and the bad things about my personality that you believe help me to be who I am and you believe are hurting me? And your task is to sit quietly and have 0 rebuttals. None. You are not allowed to justify or protect yourself. So the people that love you, they'll tell you, like, and they'll sit there and they'll give you the feedback, but then they're going to give you the real, like, I don't think X, Y, Z, because most of the time our ego stops us from getting good feedback to make ourselves better. So if you can sit there and let somebody give you some feedback, knowing that you can't respond, they'll be a little more open. And if the first moment that someone gives you something bad, it's going to predict how the rest of the moments will be. Because if the second they tell you something bad and you rebut it, they're not going to say anything else. And you're now stopping yourself from getting some gold. The third person you find is someone that you know you guys don't see eye to eye. Like maybe it's someone that you've had an argument with in the past, someone that may be mean, like had argued, whatever it is, like someone that you know is not your best friend. It could be a coworker, could be an ex-girlfriend, ex-boyfriend, whoever it is. Like you got to get a hold of this person. What you do is you do the same thing and you sit down and tell them, hey, I have this task. I'm trying to better myself. The task is I need you to tell me what you truly think of me, and I'm not allowed to respond or rebut in any way. I won't even get mad. I just want to see your perspective. And they say the people that are most honest are kids and angry people, right? That's who it is. So let them pour into you. It's difficult, but you'll sit there. But here's the crazy thing. Most of the time when you have people give you feedback like that, because so few humans can do it and take the feedback gracefully, I've seen relationships mended from that. Like the thing where it's like, just pour into me. And then at the end of the conversation, you say, they just, what do you think of that? You can actually let it process. And as it processes, you can say, you're right. And you can start taking ownership right then and there. And then you see this little thing switch, and someone who didn't like you for some reason starts to have a little more respect for you. and they start to have a little more care for you, then you actually see relationships get mended. So ex-girlfriends, ex-boyfriends, ex-wife, like this stuff changes. So that's the task. 3 people, ask what they do and don't like. You cannot respond.
Ooh.
Dude, I think that I'm gonna say it. That's the best mission of the day that we've had.
The best mission of the day.
100%.
We've had some good ones.
Nice.
We have.
That one's good.
Anthony.
Yeah.
Where can everybody find you? Where do you want people to find you? I'll say that.
Best place is on Instagram, man. It's where I personally spend my time. I go on there. It's at Anthony Trucks.
Awesome. Nice and easy. Wade, final thoughts.
Unbelievable. I think really solid billboard. We're gonna have to listen to that one more time to nail that quote down. But that's your own quote.
Yeah,
I like that.
Dude, that's good incredible,
quote,
man.
Great mission of the day. Truly appreciative of your time.
Very welcome.
Love everything that you're doing. We got to watch a lot of the videos here while we're setting up indoor podcast studio.
Dude, yeah. After we stop recording, man, stay on here real quick because there's I want to address a couple of things.
Yeah, okay. I also want to challenge our listeners to go to your website and check it out to your modesty and humbleness with your backstory was tremendous, but they should go and listen to like a little longer, more detailed, because sometimes we find ourselves having little fucking pity parties for ourselves and shit.
Dude, and even now, and both of us have dropped the victim card like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I still find myself fucking having pity parties.
Yeah.
So
and then I'll snap out of it.
Check out the website.
It's So Anthony, dude, thank you so much, man, for hanging out with us, man.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. I had a blast too.
Accommodating, thank you, man. With the video and the podcast stuff, and this was so easy and so great.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
Thank you, man. So, guys, follow Anthony on Instagram. Make sure you go on his website, check out his story in depth. If you love listening to our podcast, subscribe. Tell a like-minded friend about us. We love new listeners, guys. We also want to thank you for 12,000 downloads now. How cool is that?
Yeah, congrats.
Crazy.
Thank you, man. Thank you. It's when you start from 0, 12,000 is a lot.
Hey, it's a period, because that's 12,000 people that have been helped some way. So even if it's
how
right,
incredible is that?
Matter.
Dude, just to think about that, man, and I'm baffled every time I look at the number, and I'm like, oh, it's getting bigger. It's amazing, dude. It's a direct reflection of the amount of people that we're reaching and we're helping, and it's tangible, and it's so cool, and it keeps us going. It keeps us motivated to do upgrades, to keep doing the podcast not only, but to like invest in it, like time, energy, effort, doing video stuff, equipment. And we love it, man. And we're reaching out to some awesome people like yourself, and everybody's responding. We got some more awesome guests coming up in the near future, guys. Remember, subscribe to the podcast, follow Wade and I on Instagram. Make sure you go check out Anthony and his story on Instagram and on his website. And until next time, we're out.
Semper Fi.
Yeah.